because Black people as intellectuals sort of will not be fed that inequalities and racisms obviously don't exist. They are, we have an understanding now that there is a lot of work to be done. We've had enough policies, recommendations that have been in place, whether it be the disparity report in 2018, whether it be the Lamy report in 2017, and we could go back 20 odd years to the McPherson report. And all those recommendations are all things that need to be implemented to make things fair. Or we could bring it up to today, and The State of the Nation by Omar Khan and other authors from the Runnymede Trust, who basically talked about inequalities across society. So for me, a lot of my work has been dealing with that, being quite clear on what is racist and what's anti-racist. But then a lot of people coming to me with guilt and almost spilling different stories in relation to themselves and almost confessions. And now I'm not Jesus. You know, you don't need to confess your sins to me. For me, it's about you doing the work. You being progressive, reading Black authors, Black literature, and then in your own sort of spheres, doing what you can to dismantle inequality and racism in those spaces. So for me, my work has been very varied. And I'm supporting organisations from, like I said, the Anthony Walker Foundation to Innocent Smoothies. So I'm doing all kinds of stuff at the moment. But it's all in the right direction. And I said, this is where the change has come. I think social media has a lot to do with that. But then we've sort of stood on the shoulders of like my parents' generation, and that information's been passed down to me. Now I was 35 yesterday. Yay. So I think it's about us moving on, progressing and being progressive and putting things and frameworks, transformative frameworks in place for these inequalities to basically go. That's it.
So important. Well, it sounds like you've just been a little bit busy.
Oh, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
And how about you, Michelle? How are you doing?
I'm doing okay now. I wasn't doing good on the 25th of May. I went through so many different experiences and issues, and one of the things that I questioned is I've been doing this for 40 years. So I've been fighting it in racism and discrimination and working to address it for 40 years in 4 key different organisations in this city. So, you know, as a 17-year-old, I started off in the Charles Wotton, and I was very, very lucky to be with the likes of, you know, Claire Dove, Maria O'Reilly, the Liz Drysdales of this world, all these powerful Black women who were looking at what was going wrong and was helping us as young people to understand it. So they basically put that fire in our belly 40 years ago, and I've worked to address that ever since. I then moved from the Charles Wotton to LMU Academy, where we're addressing the exclusion of children and what they're experiencing in the education system. I then moved on to the Novas group, and I'm part of a small Black team that helps to develop the Contemporary Urban Centre in Jamaica Street, which then kickstarts the whole Baltic Triangle. And I'm now, and have been for the last 14 years, the chief exec of Kuumba Millennium Centre, which is the legacy, the living legacy of the Liverpool Black Sisters, which I was a member of as a 17-year-old girl. So I'm really pleased that, you know, when I looked at after getting through the anger, I looked at what I needed to do. The first thing I did was question whether that 40 years of work made a difference. And I had to just stop and breathe and say, you know what, it has. It doesn't look like right now and today, but we have made some difference. And there is still a long, long way to go. But the main thing that we need to do as a community is to participate at every single level. And we as elders, or we as heads of organisations like Kuumba, like the Anthony Walker Foundation, our commitment and our drive must be to pass the baton and I'm not climbing a ladder on my own. I go up that ladder and I bring people with me. And I've done that in many different ways throughout the years, throughout that 40-year period. Where I'm at today is looking at the truth that needs to be told, the truthful dialogue between the organisations. I sit here today as the Chief Executive Officer of a Black-led organisation. I am also a trustee, a board member of National Museums Liverpool. I am sitting there with that board, you know, addressing the bigger issues in terms of 8 venues in this city and the impact that has on lots of different sectors. So I make sure that my work actually, and have done, make sure that that work infiltrates not only the understanding, because we need to learn in order to progress forward. We can scream, we can shout, that does not work. What we need to do is action. But also right now, I'm like of the mind that my action will be speaking truth. So if you're not doing it, don't come and ask me if you're doing it, because I'll tell you you're not. What I will do is say to you, what I have done for 40 years is be positive, that we can address racism and discrimination, albeit very, very slowly, that we can break down those barriers of, you know, non-access or very little access, or even when you get in there, you've got no progress. I am a big believer in not only breaking down the ceiling, the glass ceiling, but smashing that concrete ceiling right out of the park. So my first thing, because I could not speak, and this is the first time that I'm having a big public conversation with a group of people. I was in Victoria, so I wanted, the first thing I did was made sure that the voices of others spoke. And I got asked time and time again in the last 4 weeks, will you speak to the press, the media, the TV, or the radio? No. I didn't want to speak to anyone because first and foremost, I felt it was the Black men's voices that needed to be heard. You know, a Black man died, a Black man that had a massive impact on me. So I didn't even expect what was going on for the Black man. And so that's when I got involved in doing our Power Hour videos, where me and Joanne and others spoke about our feelings. Because you have to feel, and you have to discuss that first in order to plan. And then when you plan, you're coming back with a major strategic plan that will hopefully have a really good impact, not only for the work that I've been doing and others for 40, 50, 60 years, but to put together a plan of action so the younger generation behind us, we are passing them not only experience, we are passing them some serious strategic plans so they can move forward.
We'll definitely be talking more about that a little bit later on. And I think it is really important, like with what you said about, you know, feeling and expressing. And I think for me, it has been a really hard few weeks, because I always think like that could have been my brother, that could have been my uncle, even if I'm not living in that foreign continent, that could be somebody that I know. I have people over there in America. And I think it also brings up things that you've been through and things that you've experienced that you may have buried and thought, actually, wait, I have experienced this, and I have experienced this just because of the color of my skin. So I think it is so important that we need to have these discussions and have these conversations and talk about how can we break this apart? How can we change things so things like this don't happen again? And all the work that you've done and all the work that you're continuing to do, Dominique, as well, that they actually make an impact and make a change. So kind of looking at it at the sphere of kind of business and businesses and organizations, in terms of in terms of like hiring practices, because I think that's really important, you know, seeing yourself, seeing others in the organization that also look like you. How do you think businesses should be scrutinizing how they recruit right now? Like, For those that want to improve diversity in their teams, in their management teams, what should they be reviewing? What way should they be recruiting? What would you say with that? Dominique, let's start with you.
I think what I would suggest is that value and difference and inclusion should be tabled at every single meeting, right across the board. I don't think it's something that should be separate. It's a health and safety issue for people at work, whether they're dealing with microaggressions, which often lie beneath the surface of workplace environments, or whether it be obviously obvious discriminations where it's quite covert. So for me, value and difference and inclusion and hiring people of difference should be something that's tabled.
Do you think language, the recruiting panel, that whole process of recruiting, how do you think organizations and business can make it so that they have diverse teams? What would you say? Is it language? Is it network? How do they change the recruiting process?
Well, in order for you to hire people of difference, or people of colour, your selection pools have got to be diverse. So you can't be dipping into the same selection pools and expecting any different results. You know what I mean? So I think you've got to be as specific as that. Obviously, your interview panels and your processes for applications, those things need to be sanitized. And then the people who are doing your interviews have to be diverse. Those, again, these are just obvious things that we should be doing. It's proven through different theories that if you have an African sounding or an African sounding name, that you're less likely to get chosen for a job, and so on and so forth. So it's putting protocols and systems in place that sanitize that information so everybody gets a fair chance. Simple as that, but you've got to diversify your selection pool. That's it's a no-brainer. It's what you've got to do.
Can I come in here? Right, I would take that a step further and be able to say with example how we've increased Black representation in the various sectors. One way that is really, really important is for employers to listen to see the benefits of employing all people. I think for the people that are actually in jobs and in positions, their value needs to be recognised. So it's not good enough just employing a Black person. It's really good practice if that Black person progresses whilst they're in that space. I think they need to look at the recruitment, looking at a policy. If the policy is too long and does not include the recognition of the diverse issues and cultural issues that can be fed into a policy and practiced by all, it's not going to work. If you're recruiting and sending your ads to only white media or spaces that I've never gone through the media to get a job. I've gone for 4 jobs and I've got 4 jobs. You know, the main thing is that it's sitting there and looking and making sure that those organizations, those companies have access to the network, the massive network in our community and right across the board, to make sure that they have the information about the jobs that they've got available. It's also about, in those companies, you know, being honest with your staff and allowing your staff to be honest without feeling threatened or seeing them as the angry Black employee. These are people who've got voices. Let them speak, you know, because it's very uncomfortable. And like Dominique said, and I know, because I've been like everyone coming to me, asking me. I've said the best thing that we can all do is be honest. And it may be uncomfortable speaking, but we've got to do it.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think one thing with what you said there about when you are doing the recruiting process and not sending it to the usual places that you do, there's quite a lot of different organizations now that particularly, you know, where you can recruit BMAs or people of color who are IT, who are engineers, who are this or that. So do you think organizations need to do a lot more of a thorough research in terms of where are we putting our job advertisings? Like, are they reaching the right kind of people? And even possibly, let's say if they have a panel of people And if there's not enough diversity, to re-put that job out again in different spheres, so to make sure that they do have that diverse pool. Would you say
I've been involved in the recruitment of many organisations, not just my own.
Yeah.
I'm very often asked to go and sit on other people's panels to ensure that, you know, there's some diversity. But the thing about me is, if you ask me to sit on your panel, you know, I'm a serious member. I'm not a tick box. So I will look. I don't want to be involved in a panel, an interview panel on the day. I want to be involved in the process from the beginning. And I mean, I go as far back as the beginning of you even starting to think about a new post and how that should look. Well, I think that one of the things is that, you know, you can exclude Black people by just a title that they've never had. You know, a title on a job ad will automatically exclude people if they've never had those jobs. And the only example I can give is the Novas one. I was here watching Novas throw jobs out for 1.5 years before I went for a job there, because it did not say anything that I could do. The fancy London words did not work for me. As soon as they put in community, I was like, I can do that. And I went in there and I've done it. And now I've got a legacy of that work. So it's little minute things like consider. And if you don't need to go to a specialist. You don't need to pay a consultant. Pick up the phone and ask the community organisations that have been there for 20, 30 years how they have managed to become big recruiters and put through their organisation. For Kuumba Imani alone, we have employed 46 local people in our organisation. And before that, the Liverpool Black Sisters went into the tens, and before that, the Liverpool 8 Law Centre, South Liverpool Personnel, all these organisations that we came through. This is how we learned. We didn't read a book. We acted on what was changing and ever changing on a daily basis, and that is the most important thing that's happening right now. Even this conversation. At first, we were supposed to talk about getting back out after the economy, you know, after the COVID. It's completely turned around to race. And I don't mind that, because I'll speak race all day. But I also, it's not just my interpretation. I think there needs to be a space where everybody is able to participate. 2 people, Kerry and Buster, on Saturday, was able to galvanise 7,000 people on a march, a peaceful march, no argument, no fights, because they just felt it. They didn't go and ask anyone. They didn't go and make a plan. They just did it with their network who believed in that march.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think one thing also somebody has said in the Q&A is about sanitizing names. Do you think, because I know I've heard that a few times, where recruiters will only have like the first name of somebody looking for a job in terms of like the process. Do you think that's something good organizations should do or should do?
Well, I've never heard that, to be quite truthful. So unless that's in the private sector, it's not in the voluntary.
No, there was a proven study that said in relation to bias, we have affinity bias, don't we? So we prefer people obviously who are the same as us. Now, what the study basically said, if you put obviously more English sounding names and African sounding names, that basically 9 times out of 10 they would take obviously the white sounding names, and even if they had the same exact qualifications, that would always get picked. So to prove it, there's actual studies that talk about our biases that we have in relation to recruitment processes. I think similar to what Michelle said, if you don't have an attraction, recruitment and progression and retention sort of program or strategic plan as part of your organisation, alongside any sort of continual professional development for when people of colour and people of difference come into your organisation, you're fighting a losing battle anyway, because there has to be a plan of ongoing progression and professional development, and also opportunities for promotion as well. there's also those things as well.
Yeah. Can I just say, really, if you've got a good recruitment practice, you shouldn't even see a name. You should not see any personal details on an application. If your practice is good and it's following a correct procedure, you should not see no personal details of those applicants. So, you know, if that is the case, you need to question your own systems because they're not working. You know, in Liverpool, the largest amount of black staff employed in organisations were, and NML is one of them. NML has 40 odd staff in its 8 venues. The Novas was the other largest employer of local black staff. And so when you go and you look at those organisations, those bigger organisations, you know, right now as a trustee of NML, I am working with Laura, the board, the executive staff, and all the black staff to look at how we progress NML as a you know, model of good practice in the museum sector. And a lot of work is going on. But what you need before you even start that work is a real commitment. And right now, under Laura Pye, there is a real commitment for, you know, this institution to be reflective of the city that it is based in.
Yeah, that's really good. Really, really important. So kind of going on to, you know, after the recruitment process for workplace culture. So in a broad sense, what does an equal, inclusive workplace physically look like? So, you know, you've employed this person, you know, your team is growing in diversity, there's all different people from the community, from your city. So how does that look physically to have an equal workplace? So, for example, prayer rooms or flexible working hours. How can organizations and business make a workplace culture physically, you know, equal for everyone?
I have a building, so I can talk about how my building looks. You come into Kuumba and you know you're in a multicultural, multi-purpose centre.
Okay.
We've got access to the prayer room. We're considering we're actually looking at a redesign of the building at the moment. And we are also considering the cultural requirements that are needed within that redesign. It's about how what you've got in terms of access. We are a fully disabled access building, and it was built purposely for that. So any person can come through that door. It's not just one group. I think it's really important that your literature, your marketing literature states and shows that. I think your employment practice needs to promote that. And I think that, you know, in terms of, for me, one of the things about coming out of COVID and sitting in my house office for the last 12 weeks is that it's really made me think about how we do business in the future. So already I'm looking at, in terms of the impact of a close down or a potential lockdown in the future, I want to make sure that local people who have got businesses are benefiting from Kuumba and Kuumba is benefiting from them. So I've made a commitment to purchase locally and put Kuumba money into the local economy. I've done a review of all of my supplier contracts, and some of them are going and some of them are staying, and that is because of their stance in terms of how they employ, whether they put people through furlough fairly or not. And if they didn't, bye-bye, you're no longer, I'm not buying your service. We're looking at how the company has worked with its people, not only in terms of just the furlough, but the practice afterwards. My staff, all of them, have been paid 100% since the 23rd of March. We are a small charity. You know, we're not a big conglomerate. But principally, I knew that I had to work to make sure that those staff and their families were safe in this pandemic. So if I hadn't have done that, you know, Kuumba Imani's principles of developing social and economic, you know, aims for the whole community, I would have been lying. So it's how it looks, it's how it's designed, it's how you change your policies in your building before you know, to make it safe, secure, and more importantly, inviting. We lost a potential good tenant that was supposed to start in July. And instead of me feeling angry, and I said, you know what, I'm going to turn this into a positive. So from the day we open our doors, Kuumba Imani Millennium Centre will further develop its work with L8 A Better Place by providing a L8 A Better Place community centre within Kuumba Imani Millennium Centre. We've also attracted new tenants for when we go back. So we've got some really good new tenants coming back to us, which I didn't expect. I didn't think people would be looking for space, but they are. That's because of our reputation, of how we treat people, how we consider people, and how we learn. We're not saying we're the experts. So if there's a new community that comes into our community as a refugee, we take time to consider their needs and help them with those needs.
Yeah, I really love with what you said about with your building that everyone can come in, and I think that's so important. I don't think a lot of, you know, or more actually, organizations and businesses need to think about that, because you know, you don't think about actually who is going to come into my building or my business. Are they able to feel comfortable? Are they able to do the things that they do so that they can give the best that they can give? So I think it is really important to think about every single person, not just the people that you have, but the people that you could have in the future. Know that that space is open and there for them. What's your take on this, Dom?
I think it's going back to different legislation, isn't it? I think what Michelle says is basically putting it into action. But you've got the frameworks there within the Equalities Act that covers all the 9 protected characteristics. So if you're not covering part of those characteristics, you're not factoring in the difference that's within everybody, you know? So whether it be, like you said, flexible working, whether it be reasonable adjustments, you know, the sort of the list goes on in relation to that. So use that as a definitive framework. That's what it was designed for. Those 116 different pieces of legislation were all put there for a reason. To use those frameworks and utilize those frameworks to design different policies and practices that you have. So it's not starting from zero. There's the frameworks that are already there. I suppose the only issue is you're not held to account by those frameworks. And I suppose this is where we come in to help to hold you to account in relation to those frameworks. There's not enough teeth within the Equalities Act for you to get a smack on the wrist if you don't have reasonable adjustments and if you don't have the facilities like prayer rooms and so on and so forth. And that's part of the issue. And this is where some of the inequalities come. So for me, it's about using the frameworks that we already have, all the different recommendations that we've already got, and putting them in place. So it's as simple as that. It's not, I think we try and make it more complex than it needs to be. And all of us are under the protected characteristics. They are such to cover all of us. So I think that's what our focus has sort of got to be. And I suppose that's all I can say in relation to that. I think for the Anthony Walker Foundation, we are diverse, and that's how we have to be because of the nature of the work that we do. We have to have an understanding of different communities because that's what we work with every single day. From the other organisations that I work with, for them, so for example, the police, it's a work in progress because there are not that many people that look like me when I worked in Merseyside Police, and that's something that they have to work with and have to do in terms of, I think they've got, at the moment, they've got an attraction, recruitment and retention toolkit from the National Police Chief Council, which they've got to adhere to. There's something like 46 different recommendations that they've got to adhere to. But this all goes back to the Equalities Act. So everything that we were talking about, I'm like, well, we said this in the McPherson report, like I said, in 1999. So why haven't we done it now? So why is it 2020? And this is the point. The legislation's there. You just got to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And how?
I think. Oh, sorry. I was going to say I would go a bit further and say I think that one of the things is that the experience of old me, the absolute intelligence of Dominique with her 35 years, you know, there's a gap there of 20 years. Sadly, it doesn't look like, but there is a gap between us. It's about how we share. I'm standing here and I'm hearing Dominique speak properly for the first time. Not properly, I mean, for a long period. And I'm really impressed that she knows all this stuff around legislation. Now, it's what we have to do is pull that all together. The experience, the knowledge of the legislation, and then the sharing to the people who haven't got the experience or the knowledge. We need to pass that on. By passing that on, and by also at the same time bringing people who historically or traditionally didn't know how to deal with race. You know, if we, again, I'll go back to those open dialogues, those open discussions, and just, that's the way that this is going to change. That's the way that communities, that cities are going to learn. They have to listen, they have to talk, and they have to act. That is my new mantra. Listen, talk, and act. Because if you don't do those 3 points, we're not going to go anywhere. You know, and we can act in many ways. We can talk in many ways, and we can listen in many ways. And when we talk about listening as well, when there's multicultural communities within demographics, you've got to consider that they don't know what we're doing. So you have to consider that you need to get the message across via the various languages. So a good example of that is with the L8 organisations WhatsApp group, and the way that we've been able to pull that together and get different organisations to work together to ensure that information during COVID was passed right across the board to all communities. So MTAS have translated all of the information around schools and education, so we can pass that out to all the different various communities within our city right now.
It's really important.
And that's just discussion and dialogue and acting.
Love that. So important. To anyone that is listening, please continue giving in your questions. I've seen some of your comments in there and some of your questions, and some of our panelists have answered them, but I will get to them at the end. So please, if you think of anything, just drop it in there and we'll get to answer them at the end. So touching on diverse talent, I know we talked about this a little bit earlier about, you know, getting people in, but actually nurturing them and progressing them into senior roles. So why do you think that, you know, BMAEs and people of colour are not being promoted to senior positions? What support do you think they need from their colleagues, from their managers? What training, mentorship needs to be put in place in these organisations and in this business so that we can nurture diverse talent?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
I think for me, in every organisation I've been in as a black woman, there's only been, I suppose, towards the end of my policing journey where I had senior management recognise that she's actually excellent. She's not good, she's excellent. But it was too little too late. Now, what happened in those, the other preceding, say, 7 years, when I was continuing to excel in the work that I was doing and proving that I was actually a really good detective. What was missed? So why did you only recognise that when I become chair of the BAME network? So these are some of the things, is that sometimes, and some of it's on myself, is me as a black woman, I need to understand that I've been raised in a heritage that says I have to do 2 times as much work as everybody else. I've been raised with excellence, running through everything that I'm supposed to do. Now that's hard work and it's exhausting. So that in itself is another issue. But I've been raised with that and raised with that understanding. what I needed was for people to recognise that, for me to have sponsors and mentors, and I went about actively and got them myself, but that should have been put in place for me. So I should have had a mentor, I should have had a coach, I should have had somebody who recognised that, you know what, Dominique doesn't just do policing work, she does strategic work, she does stuff on in her master's and her PhD that covers sociology and criminal, so she's doing above and beyond. And it's this recognising of an individual's personal skills, qualities, and practices, and what they do obviously day to day, that obviously needs to be recognised as well. Obviously you have to be good before we even get to promotion, and you have to be obviously good. There has to be a level of excellence and a level of striving for whatever it is that you want to achieve. So I don't just think it's mentoring, I think also it's reverse mentoring, so people at the top doing it with people who are, you know, in the lower ranks. I think it's also giving people the opportunity to be able to speak where it's safe. So you're able to obviously voice your ideas in quite executive and high meetings as well. Given the space to reflect on your own identities as well. And having an understanding in relation to the environment that you're in. So understanding the things that you can control. So I think it's called environmental mastery, where you understand the things that you can control and what you can't. Some things you can't control, but you can control the little piece of work and the things that you're dealing with. So for me as an investigator and me as a lecturer, I can control the content of what I produce. You know, I can't control sometimes how my boss will react to that, and so on and so forth. So I think it's not just these sort of tick box approaches of mentoring, of different leadership programs and so on and so forth. It's the consistent sort of almost thread that runs through your working life. So continual professional development. As soon as you enter an organisation, that's what it should be, alongside different training as well. And recognising your outside skills. So I've done community work since 2005. That should be recognised as part of the work that I do. So I think those are the things. I think that's all I can think of at the moment.
Commitment. We cannot do any of this work at all, even from what has happened on the 25th of May, if people do not have a full commitment to engage, to learn and to act. If we don't even, there'll be some organisations or some companies that think they're beyond this. When those organisations, when those white-led organisations who don't even treat their staff, all staff, but especially the black staff, right, we need to go back to our economic power. We need to stop supporting them. We need to stop buying their products. You know, there is a black economy in this world, and people need to recognise it. There is a black power within the knowledge and the experience and the cultural differences that we have. Recognise, respect and include, because once you do that, you'll have a much better offer and a much better USP that will sell even better than you're selling right now, because you're tapping it.
I think one other thing as well, Cynthia, is the power of networks. For me, my greatest strength was in not just my outside family, friends, community networks, but building a network within your organisation. And whether you do that across race, whether you do it sexuality, or you all do it together, you'd have a support system within your organisation that recognises your difference. It's not racist to recognise differences. It's when you attribute negativity to those differences. It's not racist for you to say that I'm black. I know I'm black. I wake up like this every single day, fam. Do you know what I mean? So in understanding that, I think we are socially conditioned to minimise those differences and pretend that they don't exist. No, they do exist. They are here. Now it's about understanding that within, like I said, these support networks, that I'm able to just talk freely. I should be able to do this in my organisation. Maybe we're not there yet. So we have that support network to be able to obviously garnish support within ourselves, to be able to take those things and obviously speak truth to power, to be in different executive meetings. For me, being the chair of the Black Police Association, I learned an abundance of stuff. And I was part of the Black Police Association for years. So from, I think, 2010, and I finished the police 2020. I was within that network for years, and we supported each other. We were able to push through different legislation and policy and practice that obviously had never been done before, but we were only able to do that obviously as a collective. You have to have these collectives and support, and we wish, you know, the dream is that, and I think when we set up, one of the years that we had is that we're working towards our own demise. And it's almost, I'd love to have the utopian dream where the inequality is gone and we are free of sexism, racism, homophobia, and, you know, and anti-capitalism, and so on and so forth. I wish we get to that point, but we're not quite there yet. So we have to have frameworks and collective, obviously, identities and networks in place that support people of colour, of difference, right across the board.
Yeah, and it's important to have your network that's representative. So I can sit on a step with a resident in Liverpool 8, and I can also on the same day be sitting facing Steve Rotherham and talking about the regional response to racism. You know, it's having that flexibility. I'm really lucky. I am absolutely surrounded by women, mentors, women friends, who, from, you know, the women's organisation has been a massive support to Kuumba, Imani. You know, we have supported each other, we work together, and we share opportunities or information. And I do that on that business scale, as well as with the Steve Bikos and the Amadudus and everybody else. But I also have I have different kinds of networks as well. So I have my friends and my family, and then I have my girls, my sisters. So there's a group of us. There's about 7 black women who are there for each other, 100%. Then I have my one-dayers and my wider group of women, where, you know, I know that we're not looking at each other by the colour of our skin. We've come together to work on a cause of making sure that there's equality in terms of gender and race and all the other issues. So
that's so good.
That's how you have to build it.
Sorry, we'll talk more about networking a bit. I just wanted to kind of touch on something that you said about role models, which I think is so important, definitely in the workplace and with helping, you know, people of colour and the MAEs into senior positions. So with the whole notion of role models, would you agree it's up to businesses to create new diverse role models from a range of backgrounds and industries, and not to engage in the tokenism by always approaching the same people?
I hate that. That is my pet peeve. I kick off every time I see it. I call it out when I see it, because there are so many people to speak. Let them and to impart their experience, their professionalism, their knowledge and skills. And I love it when I'm invited not to sit and talk to the press, but to sit and talk to another organisation, because I'm opening up to a wider audience. I think that people call on the same people all the time are allowing the gatekeeping within communities and within the different strands. You know, there's not one voice, there is not one leader in the black community in Liverpool. There hasn't been and there won't be. What there is, a collective of people who are really committed, who know their stuff, and who can share their skills and expertise with so many people. So you need to broaden your network as a company. You need to broaden your network as an organisation. If you have somebody from the black community in your network, you know, in terms of either on your board or as a member of staff, ask them to bring someone else along. We've done that with a number of things. We make sure that the network and the promotion of everybody is passed on. So the whole thing around the George Floyd, like I said at the very beginning of this, I stepped back not because I didn't have anything to say. One, because I was dead angry and I didn't know whether I'd be nice. And I thought, I better just shut up. But most important thing was because I wanted the voices of men and our younger generation to say what they needed to say. And I am sitting here today as a proud elder of 57 years of age, looking at the work of the Goddess Projects, looking at the voice of Samaya and Kiara Muhammad and all the other young Black women, and going, go on, girls, you're there, you're getting there. What I want them to do, though, is to look and to listen and to talk to us oldies, because we also have something that we can share, not for them to add or for them to do it that way, but for them to just hear about the factual historical steps that we have taken in our decades of experience.
Yeah.
So one of the things I would say to you and Dominique is I would love for the Goddess Projects to pull together a Goddess Project conference that brings the intergenerational Black women together to share their experiences and to pull together a really good strategy of support moving forward. So if that is done, we're handing over that information and we're also learning. I learn a lot watching the Goddess Projects, Kiara and Samaya and Nasra, Elliot and others, and Janice Deastoe, because they're out there and they didn't get their fire in their belly like I did from the Maria O'Reillys or the Claire Doves. You know, they have come and they've got another understanding. They're like techno whizzes that I could never be, you know, so I want to learn from them now as well. I want them to share with me what they've got to offer so I can see how we can work together even stronger, because I really truly want to make sure that I am nurturing, open and honest so I can pass that baton on. I want to pass the baton on. I want to identify now the CEO for Kuumba Millennium Centre, the potential one. So, you know, let's work together in a much more open and honest way. Let's not fear each other. Let's just do it.
Yeah. Dom, what are your thoughts on role models?
Role model, I think it's useful.
Yeah.
I think for me, in my life, majority of the mentors that I've had have been Black women.
Yeah.
One of mine in policing was Irene Affle, and she was a detective, and she was the first. And that's what I wanted to be. And although I didn't think that if I didn't see someone like Irene, I couldn't do it, because I knew that I could.
Yeah.
It was supportive and instrumental in my work, and having a woman who understood exactly the things, obviously, that I experienced and where I wanted to go. So it did help. I think what Michelle said in relation to TDP conference, I'm already 10 steps ahead. Yeah, Michelle, it's coming. It's coming. We're doing anti-racism stuff at the moment, but it is coming, promise you. It's coming. But for me, my greatest role model is my ma, like my mum. She was a goat farmer in Jamaica. Do you know what I mean? She had like goats. She come here, Windrush generation. My grandparents were my granddad was in the RAF and my grandma was in the NHS. They come over here, there's 8 of them. Extensive racism that they suffered in Coventry. My mum had us, all 6 of us. She raised us on her own. My mum and dad got divorced when I was 13. And then my mum went on to go to the Charles Walton Centre, did an access course, did her degree. And she sort of instilled in me that resilience, that, Dominique, you have to do the work. You do have to do the work. There is excellence in everything that you do, but you can do it. Like and from me, I see she raised goats in Jamaica. Do you know what I mean? to being the first person, the first black woman in her family to graduate, the first black woman in her family to buy a house. Do you know what I mean? She was doing all the first. So for me, the way I feel, she was my greatest role model, and continues to be in everything that she does now with setting up the Anti-Walk Foundation, and also speaking on how we can make this world better. For me, she is the best Christian I've ever met in my life, because she lives it and walks it every single day. She's not perfect, but she does live it and walk it every single day. So I think role models is key, but also understanding your own personal identity, the things that make you tick, the things that push you and lead you to strive to succeed, those things that get that fire in your belly moving. Those are the things also equally that you've got to recognise in yourself. If something's just not hitting it in relation to the workplace, maybe that is not for you. So it's finding those different things, obviously, that resonate with you and taking those forward. There's an understanding of your personal identity, which is key to your well-being. It's so central to your well-being, and so important. So it's being reflective of yourself, but also going outside as well and using that almost as a template. But understanding it starts with self. That's where it starts with. It's not, do you know what I mean? Yes, racism exists in society. Yes, our systems are intrinsically racist. We understand this. We've understood this for centuries. There's inequalities across gender, class. The list goes on. Race, it goes on. But, and there is a but, we have to obviously have in place within ourselves transformative frameworks that enable us to be able to strive to succeed. So whether it be the government introduced anti-racist policy, and I'm not talking just policy, I'm talking about actively anti-racist policy, which makes it fair right across. Things like the inclusion of class within the Equalities Act may be something to consider, which will cover not just economic inequalities, but equalities right across the board. Something to consider. But it's things like that. I think we've just got to have the foresight to know that if we want to do something, we just get out there and do it. And I think what Michelle said in relation to look, listen, talk and act, it's a mantra for life. Just get on and do it. And as long as you've got the support networks to do it. And I think it was Audre Lorde who said, I was not meant to be alone and without you who understand. So it's about having those networks and how important that it is to not do this on your own, because you're not on your own.
Yeah, amazing. We've only got about 15 minutes left, so I just really want to get through some of these questions that we've got here. We've had some great discussions, so I don't want to miss out on these ones. So kind of going into branding, messaging and marketing, definitely for businesses and organizations. What is the significance of people of color, BMAs, seeing themselves in marketing materials, websites, flyers, events, panels, leadership? I know for me, it's really important. That's one thing. If I'm looking for a job, and I go to their website and I don't see anyone that looks like me, then it's kind of like, okay, so I'm going into a place where I'm going to be the 1% or the 10% again, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So what is so important about that branding and, you know, people seeing themselves within the flyers, websites, all of those? Michelle? I
don't think it's as much as the importance of seeing yourself. I think it's just, again, it goes back to good practice. Okay. You know, I don't want to see someone there just because it's a marketing, you know, tool. I want to see your company reflective and respectful of the many different types of people and cultures and communities. So putting a black woman onto an advert, to me, is not enough. What will get my attraction more is seeing a group of different types of women on a leaflet. I think that don't do it just because you think it's going to attract our attention. Do it because it's part of your message. It's part of your respect and recognition that there's more than just one group. I think if you don't see any, then, you know, I question that, but I don't mind. I'll phone them up and say, excuse me, you know, don't quite see any diversity coming out of your company, and ask those awkward questions. Okay. So, but that's because I'm quite gobby, so I don't mind. I'll go and ask the awkward questions for myself, but also for others. You know, so it's important but do it for the right reason. Don't do it just because someone, you know, is telling you to. Do it because you want to.
Yeah, that's true. Dom?
Yeah, no, I just second what Michelle says. I think it's got to be consistent. So you can't have all these black people on the front of your page, and then when I rock up, your receptionist white, there's Keith in the corner, there's John. Now, like, we've got to, do you know what I mean? You've got to actually be representative. And it's not just colour, it's all the different protected characteristics as well. I think for LGBT communities, they love to see the rainbow. Do you know what I mean? They love to see that representation in your organisations. And I know it can be contrived and people say it's political and stuff, but everything's political, the personal's political, everything is. What we do is everything, how you do your day is political. So I think it's about it not being contrived, being consistent. You've got to have anti-discriminatory policies to back up that stuff. So when I come into your organisation and I ask for your hate crime policy, you can show me. You can show me your Equalities Act and your equal opportunities things, and for me to not just see it, but also to have it in motion as well by the things and the structures that you have in place. It's got to be representative, because we'll call it out. Do you know what I mean? Because I know within the black community, there are organisations that you won't go to because you know. So we must talk. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's about us obviously being understanding and being doing things obviously as a collective and understanding that basically that these organisations obviously have to definitely definitively represent us, or just leave us alone. Do you know what I mean? Leave us alone.
And like I said, you know, if 2 people can pull together 7,000 people at no notice, imagine what the rest of us can do. You know, sorry, imagine what the rest of us can do. You know, that's one man, one woman, pulled together. Sorry, one man, one woman pulled together the thoughts, the feelings, and the expression of 7,000 all types of people who just believed in that day. Like, that was the first day I physically came out my house to support Kerry and Buster, to be one of the members of the black community that is sitting there in an organisation saying they want to do stuff. I could not sit in my house, even though I did not want to go out to anywhere else. Because it wouldn't have been right. I can't sit there in my house and hide from something that was so important. And that was the one thing that was really, really important, to show that we was behind those local people who pulled that off. And they pulled it off so bloody well. I was so proud of them. But the first thing I said was, capture that. Capture those 7,000 people. Because next time you've got something to say and you go ding on your Twitter or type on your Facebook, you've got 7,000 voices immediately at the attention of what you need to say. So let's just move forward, and like I said, do things differently, do things the same, bring a bit of the past with the current present, and let's see how that blends for the future. That's the way that we need to be going. Because this is all new to all of us.
So one word been flying around is being an ally. So how can white people support their BMAs and people of colour colleagues and be an ally, top to bottom, even if they're not in senior roles and feel they don't have any direct power, but how can they still be an ally?
I think there's a number of ways. I think probably the first would be understanding your own identity. So what does it mean to be white? How does whiteness navigate in our communities? How does it navigate in my own life? Having an understanding of all those different things and how that manifests are the things that I think which are the norms. The actual norms, or are they white norms? Are they cut? Do you know what I mean? I think it's about understanding those different things. I think it's about, obviously, like I said, your identity, understanding how race operates in society. So it's understanding that it's embedded in all our identities, whether you self-consciously or unconsciously, or decide you don't want to see it. It is part of our identities. It's one of the first things when I've started this talk that you would have noticed about myself, probably before you noticed I was a woman. Sometimes my blackness can become more transparent than my emotions, and that's where the difficulty comes. So it's about them understanding that, reading around different anti-racism scholarship. So it could be how to be an anti-racist, it could be how we get free, it could be living a feminist life, it could be Angela Davis, women, race and class, it could be British by a few. There's enough black literature out there, and literature of people of colour, so like Nikesh Shakula, The Good Immigrant. It's about reading and having an understanding of sociology as well. 100%. And then also it's about understanding that the emotional toll when you do go to your black friends and your friends of colour that this may have on them. So going and doing your own work to have an understanding of how race operates and how inequality operates across this country. A good start would be The State of the Nation, which is a report by the Runnymede Trust, which talks about race inequalities right across the UK, and it breaks it down from white British to Chinese people, right across the board. So it's about having an understanding of the context of this country, understanding that our systems are institutionally racist, understanding what racism is and what anti-racism is, and being actively anti-racist. And it's about understanding what we say about race and what we do about race as well. I think you have to be, like I said, actively anti-racist as an ally. And also understanding that sometimes you might mess up, because we've all been racist at some time. We've all been anti-black at some time. So it's understanding that this is a journey. It's not just something that, I think Audre Lorde said, revolution's not a one-time event. So if you start to do this work, you might start to go down a rabbit hole, and as long as you've got a support system alongside that, I think that's how it has to be. That's how you be a good ally. It's got to be active though. It can't be passive, because we'll call you out on it. That's the thing. We'll call you on it, and we'll be able to see it.
And that is that's why I said, listen to each other, talk to each other, and act, for the wider cause. For me, I've got the confidence to speak the truth. I've got the confidence to speak to anybody. I do not feel intimidated going in any part of this city. I've stood there when there was only 10 of us amongst the hundreds in Bootle, fighting the fact that Tommy Robinson thought he was going to come into our city. And, that was a reality. We went to Bootle. That was something that may not have happened 20, 30 years ago when we were just staying in our own community. But it's about making sure that that confidence I've also got empathy for understanding. So knowing that everybody's not at the same level. Knowing that everybody doesn't feel quite as comfortable as me saying, well, that's wrong, or it's wrong. One of the things that I always do is I criticize and come up with solutions. So if there's something that's wrong, I will tell you it's wrong. But I'll say, that was wrong, but you can fix it by doing this. That is the link of communication, understanding, but more importantly, commitment to make change. Like I said, COVID is a new thing. None of us can get our head around this. George Floyd's murder was a real thing and has made a worldwide impact. We all need to know how to channel all those different feelings we're feeling to make the world a better place. But always recognize George Floyd, and that that man died sadly and horrendously and was murdered by the police. So let's not forget that. Let's not try and pretty that up. It was not pretty, but the good thing is that it's brought communities together. The fact that that Koreans are standing there with a big plaque plaques saying Black Lives Matter, the fact that Filipinos are doing it, the fact that other countries that never ever came out to tackle racism are out there screaming it, the fact that blacks and whites are coming together and working together, sadly, that is what has come from this. I wish that man was there with his family. I wish that his wife or partner and his child, who's not going to see her father and be embraced by him, that we have to do it.
Yeah.
We have to embrace and put the love and the action into the world that sometimes gets taken away through acts of stupidity and wrongness. So.
I think touching on kind of what you're talking about, talking, just the last question now. So we all have to listen, talk and act, as you said, so rightly, and address these inequalities. And that means having honest discussions, which are not easy, and collectively organising and positive and productive action for change. So can this be organised in the workplace? Can these honest discussions, positive and productive action be done in the workplace, and how? Dom.
How can it be done? Like this? Woman organisation, for me, I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm just like, you just do it. You create the spaces and you do it. I think for me, the woman organisation impressed on me a thread of just difference. As soon as I rock up, as soon as walk in there, sort of my scouse self, and say hello, I can see the difference and how that organisation operates. Which for me it resonated with me, and I was just like, this is somewhere that's comfortable for me. And you guys do it all the time, and I'm not bigging you up, because I wouldn't, just, you know what I mean, unless it was actually true and you were actually representative. So I think it's about just actively doing it. It's creating the space to do it. It's tabling, like I said, equality, diversity and value and difference and inclusion in all your policies. It should be on every meeting, not at the end. We talk about this at the start of the meeting, when everyone's fresh and we can actually go away with definitive actions about how we actually tackle this and how we actually do things in relation to difference within our organisation. So for me, it's just do it. You can invite me, just holler. All you have to do is holler.
You don't have to invite me, because I always just come anyway. I'm there. I get in. I you know what? At the end of the day, if, like Dominique said, make sure that it's there on the agenda. And I will go one step further and say, make sure it's on the agenda and you talk about it and discuss it at meetings. But more importantly, make sure it's in your work. Make sure it's in every fabric of every part of your organisation, that it's recognised and it's at least questioned. Because once you start to question the way in which your organisation works, that's when you can come up with answers to make it better. And like Dominique says, I totally agree with her. We don't always get it right. There's nothing wrong with getting it wrong either. A learning experience, a mistake is a learning experience. And that's how I always take it. You either learn from it and move on, or you do the same thing wrong and you get slapped down the second time, but you'll eventually learn from it. There's a good Jamaican saying, what you can't hear, you must feel. So that is how we need to be dealing with this. If people cannot hear, they will feel. They'll feel by us taking our stance against them as an organisation and saying we're not even engaging with you. We'll take our stance with our black pound and we won't purchase from you. Or we'll take our stance and as a collective we will move forward. I go for option 3. Let's move forward.
Amen. Yes to that. Yes, indeed. Michelle, Dominique, thank you so much. These conversations have been amazing. And I'm sure a lot of people have learned a lot. They're going to go away. They're going to act. They're going to talk. they're going to do, you know what I mean? And these are the things that we can do to make change, you know what I mean? And people are asking also, where can they find you? Twitter, Instagram, Michelle?
I'm at, my Twitter is at m_charters.
Okay.
And well, the Kuumba Imani one is at Kuumba, I think it's underscore or a dash Imani. So that's our two Twitters. Not on Instagram yet. I need to speak to the Goddess Project. That's the other thing you need to do, Dominique, is how to do Instagram, how to do Snapchat and all the rest, because you haven't got a clue. So, you know, but that's my main thing, and hopefully people get in touch. Can I just say before we finish, thank you personally to every single person who's took time out of their day to listen to us three today. I'm really, you know, appreciative of, you know, the time that they've took.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you guys so much. Dom, where can we find you?
I've put it in the chat group, but obviously the Goddess Projects on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram and Facebook, it's at the Goddess Proj, so PRJ1. On Twitter. Also my personal Twitter is at Dominique V Walk as well. You can follow me there, and I think it's at AWF Liverpool for the Anthony Walker Foundation. It's obviously similar to Michelle. Obviously I want to thank the Woman Organisation. Thank you for censoring Black women. I think I've always sort of gone by this, if you can't hear me, I feel you don't see me, and it's nice to be seen. I think it was Tarana Burke who said that from the Me Too movement. I think, you know, it's nice to be centred, and it should continue in that way. So thank you for giving us the space, Women's Organisation. And Michelle and Cynthia, thank you. You've been fantastic.
No, you've been great.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. It was lovely.
Thank you so much. I know, you look great. You both look 35.
I know.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the attendees as well. Check us out on social media for upcoming events as well. Follow us on Instagram and on Twitter and Facebook as well. Also, just to say again, if you are needing any support and you're in the Liverpool City region, you're running a business or looking to start a business, please get in touch with Enterprise Hub. You can get in touch with us at 151-706-8113 for business support. So please, please, please get in touch. Apart from that, have an absolutely fantastic week. Michelle and Dom, thank you again for your wisdom, your advice, your openness, your honesty. It is so needed. And here's to the future and just moving forward for greater things ahead. So thank you so much.
Here we go.
Guys.